and welcome to Redheads on Romance, the podcast where Lily, that's me, and Holly,
that's me,
review romance novels and Hallmark movies for our own entertainment and hopefully yours too. So join us for a slightly snarky look at the spicy and sentimental side of Happily Ever After. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We have been on a bit of a hiatus, and that's pretty much all my fault. Busy with too many activities, working on a wedding for friend, family. So, but we're back. And today we're actually reviewing a book. We talked previously in the Tropes podcast about different kind of tropes. And, I think at some point we probably mentioned like the fantasy fairy fae kind of situation. And for those who don't know, in this genre of romantasy, which is a mix of romance and fantasy, the fae stuff's pretty big. And one such popular series is the first book in it is called A Court of Thorns and Roses. So we decided to go ahead and read this book, even though I think the fae fantasy thing isn't necessarily our thing, to see what all the hype is about. So I'm going to pass it over to Holly to give us some more background.
Yes, so I'm sure no one remembers, but I'm definitely not usually gravitating towards vampires, fairies, aliens, non-human type of romance. But, this book and series is so popular. Everyone talks about it. It seems like if you're a romance reader, it's just kind of got to be on the radar. So we're just going to take a little delve into romantasy and see how we feel about it. So we read the first book, which they ease you in by giving you a smaller book. And then the next two are going to be gargantuan. I'm on the second one. Lily's already on the third one. But we're just going to talk about the first one today. The writer, her name is Sarah J. Maas. And I thought it was interesting looking up a little background on her. So this first book, ACOTAR, A Court of Thorns and Roses, came out in 2015. So 10 years ago already. But it actually was written in 2009. And so she was actually only 23 when she finished this book, even though she was 29 when it actually got published. She started writing, it sounds like, when she was about 16. I think she was doing sort of a chapter by chapter drop on some website, and it was the most popular writing on that website. And eventually that book was condensed into, chapters were condensed into novellas and then a whole book. So she's definitely been pretty prolific from very young, which is, I think, interesting that looking back on reading this book, that she was only 23 at the time that she finished it, which is quite a feat. I feel like most writers that we read romance are in their at least 30s. And some older even than that. And so it made a little more sense to have the 19-year-old heroine in the book, which a lot of people have issues with that because the love interests are 500 years old. So that's just a little bit of background. Should we just jump in? My wonderful summarizer here she can tell you a little bit about it, but we're just kind of going to go through what happens, but more importantly, how we felt about it as we go.
All right. Yes. So let's jump right in. So in the first chapter, you're introduced to the main character. I think, how old did you say she was?
19.
So her name, you find out at some point, is Feyre? Or how do you pronounce it, Holly?
Yeah, they describe it because one of her sisters says it, and they kind of spell out how she pronounces it. It's Feyre. So.
Oh, I think I totally missed that when I read the book. All right. So Feyre, which I guess kind of goes with the whole fae thing. But okay. So you meet this main character, Feyre, and she's hunting in the woods. She's desperate to feed her starving family. You find out some backstory later, but basically they're starving. Her dad's kind of useless, and she goes out. She's trying to hunt for food for her two sisters, and she spots a deer, and she's about to go hunt for it. But then a massive wolf that she kind of thinks is possibly a fairy comes up, and she uses a special arrow made out of ash wood to try to kill the wolf. After it kills the deer, she skins the wolf and she brings both back, like the pelt of the deer and the wolf back, as well as the deer meat. So that's the start of this story. How'd you feel about that, Holly?
I didn't love. I was struggling. The beginning of this book was very slow to me. I don't know why. I just didn't get into the book at all throughout this cold, starving winter. The mom is dead. The dad is, like she said, pretty useless. The sisters, one is super mean to her and does nothing to help. And the other one is kind of just in la la land all the time, also useless. So she's the only one that's out there with her bow and arrow. She had to learn how to hunt, but she was very excited to see this deer and was like, I'm getting this deer and bringing us home some food because they hadn't eaten in a while. So, I mean, there's a reason for all this build up later, but I don't know. I wasn't super gripped at the beginning.
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny in typical fashion. You know, she describes herself as super scrawny because she was starving, but she's this tiny little, protagonist who's so brave and so strong, but also super, super tiny. And I don't know, it seems kind of stereotypical. But so you find out that Feyre lives with her older sisters, Elaine, who's kind of the one in La La Land, kind of kind, very sweet, kind of positive, and Nesta, who's kind of basically a bitch, really. You just find out as the story goes. The father's disabled and emotionally broken after he lost the family fortune. And so it's all up to Feyre. So, and then her mother did this dying command to her when she was 8. Basically, you take care of the family. So she feels like she has the weight of the family. Okay, so let's move on with this. She goes with her sisters to the town so she could sell the pelts that she just got. And she encounters a mercenary. She's like, I think this might have come from a faerie, this wolf pelt. But I think the mercenary basically is like, no, I don't think so. But she gets warned that more fae creatures are breaching this wall. So how this works in this mythical place is they're in Prithian. It's the continent or something. And then there's a wall in the south where all the mortal people live. And then above that are a bunch of fae stuff, and you find out more about that and the different courts and things going on there. But do you have any thoughts on any of this so far, Holly?
I thought the mercenary was cool, but yeah, I was still kind of not into it until a little bit later on. So yeah, she gets a very big sum. The mercenary lady, who I guess had fought in wars or something, she kind of overpays. So you're really excited. You're like, oh, she gets more money than she expected for these pelts, and that's great. Now she can buy more food or whatever, help her family.
Yes. So at this point you're wondering, but when is this going to really take off? So this is where the fun begins. So all of a sudden she's back at home with her sisters. I think Nesta's probably being grumpy. I don't remember the background here, but a big giant wolf crashes into their home and demands to know who killed the wolf, which you find out was a fae named Andrus, the one that was killed. So Feyre confesses, and the wolf creature is like, well, there's this treaty between the mortal people and the faerie people that basically they're not supposed to bother each other. And if you did, it's a life for a life. So she must either die or live in Prithian, which I guess is more the fae part, forever. So no one really tries to stop her, really. And she chooses to go with him, and she says goodbye to her family. But then her father also just is like, you know what? Just don't come back, because you should be making a name for yourself. You were too good for all of this anyway, which is pretty messed up.
So weird. Yeah. And I don't know if he's described as a wolf, but yeah, just kind of some lion, golden creature, very large, the size of a horse, I believe. And I don't know, immediately from the way he was snarling and possessive, I was like, so is he supposed to be hot, but he's an animal? I was very confused, because where these people are usually going with stuff these characteristics. He's obviously male, just demands like, you can either die now and I'll rip you. And she's like, she knew that he could really just tear her to shreds in a second. And she kind of just thought about it like, yeah, maybe that'd be better. And like, dude, just go, like, you're alive. I don't know why she acted like this was such a tough decision. Like, oh, if I go with him, then I have to like go with it. Like, but otherwise you're dead. So anyway, so she goes, and you're just like, I feel like this is going to be a love interest, but it's like an animal. So yeah, that part was a little confusing.
Maybe a bit of a Beauty and the Beast kind of Stockholm syndrome thing being set up. But okay, so she's frightened, but she learns that Fae are forbidden from keeping human slaves. That was, I guess, part of the treaty. I think humans used to be slaves or something. And then you find out Prithian, where she's going, is divided into 7 courts, and each court is ruled by what they call a High Lord. But so far, the beast is still a beast, and he like somehow knocks her unconscious for the trip, which is like not the nicest thing in the world. But she wakes up and it's spring, though where she's from it's still winter, so she's kind of confused. And she's taken to a lavish estate, and of course the beast transforms into a handsome male fae with a golden mask named Tamlin. And then he has like this, I don't know, right-hand man Lucian, a red-haired fae with a metal eye, who's also wearing a mask. And basically, Tamlin's like, you're allowed freedom while you're here. He's like, you're not actually my prisoner. Just hang out, basically.
Yeah, like, I wouldn't recommend leaving the estate because of dangers, but you're not like a prisoner. So, but she's got, you know, food for the first time, and she's trying not to eat it, but obviously she's starving. And so finally she just kind of caves. And so the red-haired guy, Lucian, like, I've been looking at the fan art of all these people just to try to like get a picture in my head. And of course, the fan art, Lucian is like super hot, even though he has like huge scars on his like messed up eye and like a fake eye. And they have these masks on that they can't take off, like masquerade masks. And yeah, Tamlin's, the story is based loosely on Beauty and the Beast originally. So that kind of makes sense. Like the golden haired man, of course, like super hot and like always talking about his muscles. So, you know, he seems to be probably in his 20s-ish, like young, but you know, we come to find out he's like at least 500 years old, I think.
Yeah,
something. So yeah.
Blizzard. Okay, so she pleads with him, basically like, take me back to my family. And he's like, I can't do that, but I promise they're being cared for. He doesn't, I don't think, explain anything at this point, but he's like, they're okay. We also find out there's some sort of magical blight that is like infecting the land and interfering with the Fey magic. And so that's kind of weird. And somehow these masks that they're wearing are a result of this like blight, like locking them in place during some sort of masquerade party. So they're like stuck with these masks on. They can't take them off. So she doesn't trust Tamlin. I think that would, you know, makes a lot of sense. She tries to steal a dinner knife from the table. So, you know, she's really a fighter. She's not sure about the situation, even though like they're being like really strangely nice to her.
So the right-hand guy, Lucian, he for some reason like gets her trust a little easier. She thinks maybe he can help her figure out a way around this treaty. However, he says there's no way out. Like they're like, stop trying to, like, there's just no way you can get out of this. There seems to be some she behind this light that's controlling everything. It's very mysterious. Nobody will really tell her what's going on. Lucian tells Feyre about the Suriel, which is a creature that answers any questions she might have, and how to trap one. Tamlin basically reassures her that, you know, she talks about her vows she made her mother, and that's why she desperately wants to go back to her family. And he's like, her vows fulfilled because her family's safe. So everything Tamlin's trying to do is basically like, you don't need to worry about anything. Stay here. Like, just who cares about your hopes and dreams? Everything's fine. You're staying here. Yeah, so she didn't realize this, but he's like, no, I left your family. Like, she's like, they can't eat without me. And he's like, no, I left them with all their needs taken care of. They'll have plenty of food. They'll have money. And she's like, oh, really? Like, couldn't have mentioned this like a little sooner. So she's wandering around the estate, although she can't read because her sisters never taught her, even though they're only like a year or two older than her. They learned how to read, but I guess with her mom dying, no one ever taught her, and they just decided it wasn't important because they lost the family fortune. She loves to paint. So we find out, that's like her secret desire is to start painting again. Tamlin returns injured from killing the bog, that monster that she had encountered in the forest. Feyre helps patch him up, of course, like, let me take care of you. So she hears Tamlin and Lucien arguing. Lucien says Tamlin has gone soft. Tamlin basically is the opposite of how his father and brother were. They both, or I guess he had several brothers. I can't remember. Were super mean to humans, like kill them all. They, if we can't have them as slaves, then we have no use for them. Like they're awful. Just kill them. They know that Feyre had stolen that butter knife or whatever off the table. Pretty pathetic. You can't really fight these powerful beings with a tiny little knife. But so he takes her into his study.
Sure. So she admits to him she can't read. So I guess she's building some sort of trust with him. So he offers to help write to her family if she wants, which I thought was nice. No talk of trying to teach her how to read, but sure, like I'll help you like write letters and stuff. So she sees a mural depicting like a cauldron and some war and the 7 courts, which is kind of curious. So she's interested in that. And then she finally asks Lucien, how do I catch that cereal you were talking about before? So he tells her that you need like a fresh chicken and some sort of snare. And he basically tells her where to do this, that you catch it and then after freeing it, you run away, but you can ask it your question. So she goes out and sets a trap and captures a cereal. Again, this mortal girl who knows nothing and would probably die, but she somehow goes out and does this. And the cereal tells her you cannot return home without endangering your family. She asks about Tamlin, and Cereal reveals that he's the High Lord of the Spring Court. So she didn't know that. That was a big shocker to her. She asks about the Blight, and he says, basically, he's kind of useless with that. He's just like, stay with the High Lord and you'll be safe. He reveals Highburn is this other place that's ruled by a brutal king who wants to undo the treaty. He doesn't like, I guess, that the humans are no longer slaves and all this stuff. And warns that some bad guys are coming, the Naga. So Feyre tries to alert Lucien, frees the cereal, shoots the Naga, and then flees. She's wounded, but Tamlin arrives just in time to save her.
So, Lucien had said to scream if she got into trouble while she was wandering around the woods trying to trap the cereal. So she did. She screamed, and we found out later that Lucien hesitated for supposedly only a moment before deciding to come to her rescue. But Tamlin gets there first, and she actually uses her first arrow to pierce the snare and free the cereal, even though the Naga are trying to kill her too. So that's kind of interesting, instead of saving herself, she first saves the cereal because he said it was like, let me go, they're coming. So she does, she lets it go. And then she, I believe, kills one of them. And then Tamlin saves her and kills another one. I don't know exactly but anyway. So they get back to Tamlin's estate, and there's a servant named Alice that is with Feyre almost all the time. And Feyre is also trying to pump her for information constantly and not getting all the answers there either. We've come to find out Lucien says that fairies can lie, which I believe Feyre has been told her whole life that fairies can't lie for some reason. And they've all been wearing these iron necklaces and bracelets to keep them safe. Apparently, iron does nothing to protect you from fairies, although the ash wood actually is useful. You want to take it?
Sure. So now Tamlin finally tells Feyre some stuff about her family. So he said he glamored her family, glamored being like kind of like messes with their minds and how they perceive things. So they believe that instead of that wolf creature, I don't know if it was a wolf, like Holly said, some sort of creature with antlers or something. Anyway, so they don't remember that, but they believe she left to care for a sick aunt. He planted the idea of a Prithian fret so they'd know to flee if needed. And her family remembers nothing of him taking her. And he also explained that some fairies once fought alongside humans in the war, that helping them win this like final treaty. And then Feyre finally says, you know what? I guess I'm kind of happy here. If I really can have something, I want paint because I love to paint and I never used to have time or money or whatnot, and I'd only do a little bit. So I want paint. So he cleans a gallery for her and like does this whole thing and basically says, this is yours and you can paint. And so, they're starting to, I think, supposedly fall in love.
I just realized that I think this is supposed to be like the part in Beauty and the Beast where he like throws open the doors to the library because she loves to read, and there's like floor to ceiling, like 100 feet tall bookshelves. And that's like her dream come true. Like when he takes her in the art gallery and she sees all these beautiful paintings and they're all done by fairies and she just can't believe the colors and she feels so inadequate in her painting skills because she just could never capture colors and light the way any of these paintings do. But yeah, she kind of realizes maybe she could be happy here. So she wakes up in the night, hearing screaming. Tamlin is carrying a fairy whose wings have been cut off, who is from the summer court. They are in Spring Court. I don't know if we mentioned that, but Tamlin is High Lord of Spring Court. So this fairy keeps saying, she took my wings, she took my wings. And Feyre comes down the stairs and just comforts this fairy who, basically there's nothing you can do to say, but she just wanted someone to be with this female. Was it a female or a male? I can't even remember, but just to be with this fairy, like to the end, the last dying breath, like, I'm here. Yes, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. Because it just kept saying, she took my wings. She took my wings. And she's like, I know. And just was trying to like hold this fairy's hand. And like, it was nice. I was touched by that moment that she, these guys are just not doing it. They're just like, well, just like haul this bleeding like person in. And then she starts to feel really bad about how she killed Andrus, the wolf fairy, and apologizes.
Yeah, so I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but Feyre and like mortals in general, they hate the fairies because they just, all their stories and all their history are like fairies are bad and they're evil and they'll kill you. And so the fact that she apologizes to Tamlin for killing Andrus is like a big deal. Like she was a fairy hater and now she's kind of like coming around basically. So, Tamlin and Lucien take Feyre to a glen and pool that looks like starlight, and you learn about Lucien's backstory here. So he was the youngest of 7 sons of the Autumn Court High Lord. He didn't want to fight for rule because I guess the strongest of whoever gets to be the High Lord. He had a lover who was like not royal, who I guess his family didn't approve of that. So they actually executed her while Lucien was watching, and he fled to the Spring Court, and Tamlin saved him from his brothers, and he became Tamlin's emissary.
So Feyre reveals her family's downfall. Apparently they had been extremely wealthy, which we did not know earlier. And her dad, it was kind of going back 3 generations of bad investments where they were basically drowning in debt, and it was all just an illusion at that point. And Feyre's dad took the last of whatever they had, invested in 3 ships to sail to some remote land to trade something for money or whatever. All 3 ships sank. The creditors came for him and basically like pounded his knee into like smithereens, and Feyre was watching. So that's where, he was still disabled, like could walk, I think, very poorly with the help of a cane at the point where we first picked up the book. Lucien admits he had hesitated to save her, but I think this kind of like won his trust. They've revealed so much to each other. And I think this is kind of a beautiful friendship forming, because Lucien seems like kind of a crusty, hardened type, but he really like softens to her, and he gives her this really fancy hunting knife with jewels all over it, instead of her having to steal butter knives off the table.
Yeah, and I think part of this thing where they go to this like starlight pool kind of situation is they're starting to build a relationship more between Feyre and Tamlin, because, you know, they're the main love interest. So, of course, they've got to make googly eyes. So they're up this thing and they kind of like get undressed and they go in this like silvery starlight pool, and they're just starting to be like, hee hee, ha ha, you're so cute and blah, blah. So Tamlin shows Feyre the final gallery, and she cries and she starts painting daily. She does feel guilty about, like, I think abandoning her family and stuff. And Tamlin reassures her, which also, again, kind of sneaky. Like, he basically made her stay there. And he's like, but it's okay. Everything's fine. You don't need to feel guilty. So I don't know how much of this we really need to go into detail, but there's just back and forth. He writes her poems, and Tamlin starts sharing important stuff like Fae can be mated, which he kind of explains is a deeper bond than marriage. He mentions his family were cruel and kept human slaves, and that his family was killed by another High Lord, making him the ruler unexpectedly. So he never planned on being High Ruler and High Lord. And this is kind of important because this comes back later about, you know, who killed his family. So here's where it gets a little more interesting. So bonfires are being built for this celebration called Callan Mai Fire Night. It's a fertility magic ceremony. So just guess what is part of the ceremony. But no one tells her anything. Because of course, why would you tell her anything? They just forbid her from going anywhere, tell her to stay hidden that night, with no explanation. And then while that's all getting set up, she hears an unseen creature, which she hears about later. It's called the Adder, talking to Tamlin. So, all right, Callan Mai. Tamlin tells Feyre to lock herself in the room until morning. And of course, wouldn't you know it, she disobeys and goes out.
And yeah, I'm with you. Like, they just keep saying, just don't come out, just lock your door, just don't come out. And she starts hearing music from her bedroom, and it's like, I don't know if they just didn't realize this, but it creates the drum beat, just creates this lure to her soul where she just cannot resist it. Like, she's a human. She has like not as much power of things and just cannot physically resist. So she comes out and just walks right out the door and heads to celebration. And the drums are just, you know, drawing her closer and closer. As she gets there, 3 fairies corner her and seem like they're probably going to kill her. A man, the most handsome man she's ever seen in her life. He's just full-blown hottie. You know he's coming into play later. Steps in and scares off the 3 like it's nothing. So he pretends he knows her, and they get out of there. Do you want to describe this stone cold hottie?
Yeah, so I love this because throughout this book, you're like, well, clearly Tamlin and Feyre are getting together. Like, that's a given. But then you see this guy, and they describe him with the black hair and violet eyes, like these beautiful, stunning violet eyes, and kind of like cat-like features with how he smiles and almost like how he talks to her. And you're like, well, clearly he's a hottie. So okay, but she's supposed to end up with Tamlin, so what's this all about? But basically, you know, he's kind of flirty with her, but she's like scared of him too, basically. But then, you know, he's like, you know, like, oh, especially you being out here at this time of the year or whatever. And of course, she doesn't know what he's talking about. And she lies to him why she's there. She doesn't want to point to knowing a High Lord or anything. She says she's there with some other women. But anyway, this stranger with black hair and violet eyes, you later find out his name is Ryzen? How do you say that?
I Googled all of this because I was so curious. Well, they call him Rhys for short, Rhys. Andy is his full name. But, in the British Welsh kind of language, Rhys is spelled Rhys. So I figured it was Rhysand. So I looked it up and it was like, it's pronounced Rhysand, but in some countries it might be pronounced Rhysand, which is also what I thought, like when it's spelled out, that it looks like Rhysand, but Rhysand, I guess, is correct. So yeah, that's his name. So do we want to talk about the smell?
Oh, yeah, you go ahead.
Okay. So, I forgot about that. Yeah, I just thought that part was so funny. So, yeah, Lucien finds Feyre next and takes her home and finally explains to her what the hell's going on. Why couldn't anyone have just said this before? During this celebration, the High Lords allow magic to possess them. Tamlin has to hunt a stag and then get down with a maiden to release all this magic for the whole year. I believe it's for the year,
for the spring magic or something.
Yeah. So to get your annual dose of magic, you have to do this rite of passage or whatever. So he smelled Feyre's smell and went crazy because you're not in your mind or something. You just turn into I don't even know, a being that has no control over themselves. And he was trying to find her everywhere and he couldn't find her. So he found some, and I guess there's just rooms full of beautiful maidens waiting to be chosen. And it's an honor, but he wanted her.
Yeah, so they basically say, I think Lucien maybe warns to this, that if he'd be looking for you, so you can't be there. He would choose you as his mate. I guess it's the first hint that he's really into her. But he wouldn't be gentle, I think is what they say. Because he's not himself. He'd just go after her. Yeah, so Feyre's oh, okay. So she goes to bed, but wakes up at 2 a.m. or something, thinking okay, everything's over. So she goes out. I don't know if she was looking for a snack or what she was doing, but Tamlin finds her in the hall, still not totally himself. And he's I smelled you at Caladmai. And he pins her against the wall, bites her neck, but I guess sexy, not actually bites her, and says he would have been gentle. And then that's when she realizes she wants him.
Yeah, this is where, okay, so they had bathed in that starlight pool and nothing happened. I'm oh my gosh, this needs to get off the ground. Why isn't anything happening? They're skinny dipping in this magical pond and it's so wonderful and nothing freaking happens. So then after this bite on the neck, yeah, he just has that feral look in his eyes, which this is where I was oh yeah, okay, this is good. We're getting somewhere. I like Tamlin. He's got that animalistic desire for her that was super, super hot. But yeah, so she just goes to bed, leaves her door unlocked for the first time. Oh wait, no, that's later. Okay. Let me go back up for 1 sec. So she wakes up, there's a big bruise on her neck. She goes down to, was it breakfast? And Lucien sees the bruise and is what is that? And she was he gave it to me. And Lucien's just what the hell? But she didn't try to hide it. She was just no shame. Yep, he did that. But then Tamlin feels bad as he starts to come to himself. He gives her roses. She decides to wear a dress to dinner for the first time to look pretty for him, even though she's been wearing tunics and pants like a hunter. And since she got there, she wouldn't wear any of the dresses. She finally shows Tamlin her paintings. One is her childhood home and her life at home. She offers to help with this magical blight, but Tamlin just will not hear of it. He does not want her to have anything to do with this. That's where she goes to bed and leaves the door unlocked for the first time.
Okay, so while they're starting to make more and more googly eyes and not too much sexy time, probably to Holly's dismay, Tamlin does something to show Feyre how the Fae see the world. So he kisses her eyelids. I think he asked for a kiss in exchange or something. So she sees everything is brighter and clearer. She tries to remove his mask. She really wants to see what the rest of him looks like, but she fails and she falls asleep in the grass beside him because she's so exhausted and lovesick or something. I don't know. So now she has this like magical fairy vision, or now he also like took down a lot of the glamours, because when she first got there, it's kind of like in Beauty and the Beast, where like, you know, you don't want people to know all this magic crap's happening, so everything looks normal and ordinary, and so he took off the glamours, and now she can see like even Alice now looks like some sort of fae, before she looked human-ish or something. So just stuff like that. So, okay, but then some more exciting stuff happens. So Feyre's just walking around in the garden, and then all of a sudden, a high-faced severed head is on a fountain statue, and it's branded with the Night Court sigil, a threat from their High Lord. So the Night Court, that's, I guess, where you hear some stuff about them, and everyone panics.
So it's time for the next party. Summer solstice celebration. Feyre wears a dress again. She is told not to drink the fairy wine, but she just, again, has this like urge, like she just cannot fight it. Like you feel kind of bad for her. Like she just has to drink this wine. It just sounds so amazing. Tamlin finds her drunk, shows her the will-o'-the-wisps, which I can't remember what is that.
I don't know. It's like these pretty lights that come out like really late at the end of the summer solstice, like over the field or something. I don't know. It was very romantic and lighty and pretty.
Yeah, so you're just kind of like imagining this beautiful fairy world. They're dancing and they finally kiss. They watch the sunrise together. Still so chaste. So very, very chaste.
Yes, they still don't get it on. Do you remember the Winter Court letter? I don't remember this. I guess a blight destroyed like 24 younglings' minds. And I think you find out that younglings are really important in the fairy world. I don't know if it's here or elsewhere, but fairies don't, or especially high fairies, they don't have tons of babies like easily. It's very rare. You know, they live hundreds and hundreds of years, so I guess it makes sense they're not popping out babies every couple of years or something. But so when there are children, younglings of high courts, they're like precious. So they find out the blight destroyed 24 younglings, so it's like really tragic. So suddenly Tamlin and Lucien hide Feyre while they're eating breakfast or something, and that, wouldn't you know it, that handsome stranger from Calamai appears, Reasoned, High Lord of the Night Court, you find out. So they're like hiding her behind some sort of spell. And so Reason is there, and he figures out someone else was dining with them, and he's able to see past the glamour, and he sees Feyre. So Lucien lies. You don't know why, but he says Feyre is his betrothed. They don't make any mention about Tamlin. But Rhys has like special powers where he can read thoughts, and he mocks Tamlin and says Amarantha will enjoy breaking her, because now he knows that Tamlin is into this girl and she's into him. And Rhysand asks her name, and she lies, and she says a name of some girl back from her hometown, Claire Bedor, which is important later. So basically, I think, is this where Rhysand makes Tamlin get... Oh, yeah, Tamlin was like, Rhysand, please, he's begging this like evil High Lord of the Night Court, do not tell Amarantha about basically my girlfriend, or whatever words he used for it. And Rhysand makes them like beg, like makes Tamlin get on the floor. And at this point I was like, I wonder if the author's purposely trying to make Tamlin less attractive, because making a male strong lead, like literally get on the floor and beg, just seemed like not attractive to me.
This is definitely where you got the ick. I can tell. I can see it all over you. You just could not recover from that moment. Because he was like, bow down, and he just literally like bows as low as he can. He's like kissing his feet, and then he tells Lucien, like, you get down now, and like he gets down too. Does he like disappear right after?
Soon after. And he said he may or may not tell Amarantha about her.
Okay, so I basically was anti-team Rhysand here, because I didn't like this part, and it was kind of like opposite of you. Like you got the ick on Tamlin, and you were like team Rhysand, and I was like, no, this guy is like so evil. Like, oh, and that's what I was trying to think of. He used his like claws in her mind. He does this thing where like he's just like scraping her mind with like feeling like claws, where he can just like hold her brain and like examine it, all her thoughts. But for whatever reason, she gave the wrong name, and he didn't, I guess, know at that point what her real name was. So anyway, he leaves. And Tamlin just immediately says, we've got to send Feyre home. And she's like, I don't want to go. Don't make me leave. This is when they finally like have their one night of passion. You know, it's not like too detailed, I would say, compared to most of the books I read. But you know, it's great now. And she's like in love with him, but he's like, you have to leave like right away. So like he just basically puts her, I don't know if he like takes her, I don't think he takes her back, but like puts her on a horse or whatever. She falls asleep for the ride and has a guide home. And he, as she's about to leave, he tells her that, you know, I love you, thorns and all. But she doesn't say it back.
Yeah, I thought this part was funny because all along she's like, there's got to be some way out of this curse and or this deal, and I can go back home. But everyone's like, no, and stay with the High Lord. And then Tamlin's just like, yeah, go home because I don't want you to die. And I think he explained it basically like, if anyone asks about your debt for killing that guy, that faerie, I'll take it on. Like, it'll be my debt. So he's just suddenly like, yeah, I can send you home, which I thought was pretty messed up. And then, yeah, he tells her he loves her, but she does not say it back. Although I think she's in the book, she definitely like feels it. But Feyre noticed Lucien is furious as she leaves. She doesn't understand why, but she arrives at, I guess, a fancy home with servants and finds her sisters there. And Elaine believes everything that Tamlin told Feyre she would, that she'd been with some Aunt Ripley, I don't know. And Feyre lies and said, okay, yeah, she died and she left her fortune. Elaine says a stranger gave their father gold and helped recover the ships that I guess the father had once invested in or something. So she realized that Tamlin basically made them super wealthy and high off. But you find out Nesta is watching her carefully while she's there.
So Feyre opens her trunks and realizes they are filled with jewels. I think she said one jewel could buy like 1,000 estates the size that the family was living in. So like ridiculous riches. I guess he also sent a magical salve to heal her father, which I don't remember that part, but
he like helped his knee.
Helped his messed up name. So Elaine and the dad are just like absolutely just restored to the happiest people in the entire world. They're just la-di-da-di-da. We're having all these parties. We're so happy. This is their jam. Whereas Nesta didn't even make it through one social season. She quit the scene. She tried to go after Feyre. And we come to find out the glamour never worked on Nesta because her mind was so like walled off and strong that she knew exactly that the whole thing about a beast coming to take her away. And she knew that Aunt Ripley was not real. She paid that mercenary to try to take her to the wall, but they couldn't cross it. And that's when Feyre realizes Nesta's not just a big old bee, but she actually like did love her and was the only family member who tried to come, not her dad, who she had that vision that her dad came, but then she realized her dad never would have done that. And she wants Feyre to tell her everything that happened while you were gone. So Feyre does. She talks about Tamlin and Prythian, and Nesta is basically like has no respect for the dad and all his failures.
Yeah, so here they're trying to say like Nesta was kind of a bitch earlier, and yeah, no one ever really helped Feyre with all the like hunting or anything like that, but Nesta truly cared for her and was the only one who set out to save her. So now like their complicated relationship, like she knows like, okay, but she loves her even though they have kind of a rough thing going between them. So Feyre, having, been poor for so long, decides that she's going to give gold to the poor people in her village. And she goes around, and while she hears about a family that burned in a fire recently. and she finds out it's the Bedore family. And that's when it clicks that Rhysand tortured Claire Better's family. That's what she believes. Okay, so then, all right, so she's like really stressed about that, obviously, because she gave Claire Better's name. Her father plans some sort of ball in her honor. Nesta questioned why Feyre's even staying, and Feyre realizes she made a mistake leaving Tamlin and must go back. Because, of course, things are great. So why stay in this situation? Go back to her now, what she thinks is her true love, Tamlin.
So we come to find out that Claire was the only one who did not perish in the fire. The dad wants to buy their estate and, just capitalize off this tragedy. Like, oh, I can get this place for a song. But Claire was actually missing. So Feyre basically is hit with the realization, I killed this family by giving her name. The blood is on my hands. So anyway, Feyre is warning Nesta something dangerous is happening. She really needs to be on watch at all times, leave at the very first sign of danger, but she's starting to work up a plan to return and try to go back, see what's going on. Feyre's out the door. Nesta says, just whatever you do, don't come back. We're fine. We can take care of ourselves. I promise I'll leave if anything goes bad here. So she somehow returns, gets through this magical wall, gets to Tamlin's manor, finds out basically everything is trashed. The house is ransacked. Everything is pretty much destroyed. So she's not really sure at this point what happened.
Yeah, so while she's, freaking out that Tamlin's manor is completely destroyed, she does run into Alice, who's still there, and reveals that Tamlin and Lucian have been taken to this place that's basically called Under the Mountain by this terrible villain, Amarantha, who, does she rule Prythian, or is she just kind of
whatever, not lord, but there's
she reports to the king from Hurrian or whatever that was called. Okay, anyway, she's this bad bee who's running this place called Under the Mountain. So Alice explains Amarantha's backstory. So she was a formal general of King Hybern, that's what he's called. So she seeks revenge on humans because of her sister Clythia's betrayal by this mortal named Jurian. Oh my God, it's this whole story. I don't even know if I want to go into it. But basically, after the treaty, instead of Amarantha releasing her human slaves like she was supposed to, she killed them all. And she moved her forces into Prythian. So she hosted this big ball with all the High Lords. And she used a potion to steal their powers. And so she's been ruling Prythian basically for 50 years almost. And there is no magical blight that Feyre was told about. Amarantha is what's causing everything. So basically, here's the story on this. So Amarantha was into her homeboy Tamlin, and Tamlin kept rejecting her romantically because, of course. So she made this curse. She basically said it could be broken if there's a mortal girl who hated Fae. This is very specific. Killed a Fae in cold blood, but then also would fall in love with Tamlin and told him so. And Tamlin had about 49 years to break the curse, 7 by 7 years. So at this party, this masquerade she threw, masks were magically bound to the spring court to make love more difficult. I guess being a beast, quote unquote, So there's a lot to unpack here. But basically, Tamlin had 49 years for a woman who hated Fae to kill a Fae and fall in love with Tamlin and tell him so. So here's where she messed up. She did not tell Tamlin she loved him. So oops. And now she realizes Tamlin lied. So she was never in danger for killing Andras. He just needed her for the curse.
So we come to find out that over the years, Tamlin had been sending out his guards or men from his court that were willing to sacrifice to go out and disguised as an animal to lure a female human to hunt them dead. And if she did so and then fell in love with the High Lord Tamlin after, like you said, it's very specific. And they all have these masks on. And so he sent out one after another, and they were all like either failing or getting killed. And there was like no men left to send out, hardly at all. And so Tamlin just called it off. I don't care what happens. Like, just let the curse kill me, whatever. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. And then he decides to do it like one more time, sends that Andrus guy out who had been taking the form of a wolf that Feyre killed and fulfilled everything except saying she loved him. And so the curse was not broken.
Yeah, and you find out that Tamlin had only 3 days left for the curse to be broken when he sends her away. Very Beauty and the Beast. Like, he doesn't, at this point, he's tricked her so much already, but like, he doesn't want to like keep her any longer because she was in danger.
Lucian was like pissed, like, don't leave, just stay, like, you can't leave. But Tamlin's like, no, you're leaving. So she just left.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. I'm not sure if it's mentioned here, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Basically, no one was allowed to tell her about the curse, so that's why there's a lot of sneakery and lying. And basically, people were telling her to like overhear things. Just listen to what you might hear; it might be useful. So, Feyre is all upset, and she demands that Alice tells her how to get under the mountain. So she arms herself, and Alice warns her of 3 things: don't drink the wine. Don't make bargains unless absolutely necessary, and don't trust anyone, not even Tamlin. And Alice tells Feyre there's still one part of the curse she cannot speak of course. Okay, so Alice then leads Feyre to the tunnel to under the mountain.
All right, so Feyre just like won't listen to any reason, and Alice is just trying to equip her as best she can in about literally 3 seconds for like her stupid, like, I'm going to go save Tamlin under the mountain from Amarantha business. To me, this was not quite enough prep for this. So basically she just goes plunging into the tunnel and is like hugging along the wall. And within about 100 feet runs into the adder who captures Feyre, takes her straight to Amarantha's throne. Like, it's just literally like she didn't even get very far, but at least she's not dead. So you're like, well, I thought like she would probably be killed within 2 seconds. So Tamlin is there sitting next to Amarantha. So that's good. Like, there he is. He's alive. However, he shows absolutely no emotion. His face is just like stone. He won't even like really look at her or anything. She proclaims she's in love with Tamlin. She's come to like claim her love, and so Amarantha is just so evil. So she shows her Claire Better's tortured body is like hanging on the wall, like her stinking corpse is like all covered in like red marks and whatever they did to her, because she was told that was Tamlin's person and nobody stopped her. So Rhysand was there watching, didn't say that's not the girl. Like, I know her name was Claire, but like, this is the wrong. He never said anything. Lucian didn't say anything. Obviously, Tamlin didn't say anything. They watched this girl be tortured and killed, and you know, what are they going to do, right? So Amarantha, we find out this is like so weird. She's wearing this ring with an eyeball in it that like can look around and see what's going on, and it turns out it belongs to Jurian, who is the human who double-crossed her sister, that her sister was like so in love with, and he was just using the sister. So after that, she had like tortured him and killed him and kept his eyeball and his soul, I guess, basically like finger bone. Oh, and a finger bone and a necklace, so that his like soul is eternally forced to like watch everything she's doing. Anyways, neither here nor there. She offers Feyre a bargain to get out of this little situation she's in. She has to complete 3 tasks, 1 per full moon, or at any time if she solves a riddle, it will instantly break the curse because, you know, basically Feyre wants Tamlin, she wants his mask off, like the whole curse broken. If she guesses wrong on the riddle, she dies. If she can't complete a task or fails a task, I don't know if she dies, but whatever. Like, she doesn't get Tamlin. So she accepts the deal because what else is she going to do? Not Amarantha, but some of the other, the Adder or somebody, like, beats the crap out of her. Like, her bones are breaking. They throw her in this stinky cell. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, it's just really depressing. Like, parts of this book are just really intense. They basically explain, like, I don't know, like her head thudding against the ground and like her bruising and stuff. Anyway, so she's beaten and then she's taken away to a prison cell. And Lucian somehow secretly gets to her and heals her, except for visible injuries, because he doesn't want anyone to know that he was helping her. But he heals her, because like, oh, High Lords can kind of do some healing or something. So he kind of gives her some background and explains that all the High Lords are trapped under the mountain until Feyre finishes the trials. So everyone's kind of depending on her. At some point, I don't remember how this happens, but Feyre refuses to give her actual name to Amarantha. So I think Amarantha pulls Rhysand in because he can do all this like mind crap. And he confirms to Amarantha now that Feyre was at Tamlin's manor, but he pretends to be confused pretended to confuse her with Claire. So, like, I think there's something going on here where he clearly knew that other girl was not Feyre, but he wasn't honest about it. Amarantha orders Lucian to be tortured until Feyre gives her name, so she finally tells them. And then Amarantha finally gives this riddle she has to solve. I'm going to read it here so any listeners at home can try to figure it out. But there are those who seek me a lifetime, but never we meet, and those I kiss, but who trample me beneath ungrateful feet. At times I seem to favor the clever and the fair, but I bless all those brave enough to dare. By large, my ministrations are soft-handed and sweet, but scorned I become a difficult beast to defeat. For though each of my strikes lands a powerful blow, when I kill slow. And I will not give the answer. Okay.
Which I thought it was funny. Like, I didn't know the answer, but I was reading a recap and the girl was like, it's so obvious. Like, Feyre is such an idiot. How did she not know the answer? It was so obvious. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm an idiot then, because I didn't know what it was. Like, I always think it's something like tricky, like the wind. It's got to be something like wind, but it's not wind. It's just FYI. So, okay. Let's just like steamroll through these 3 challenges. Like, she's not going to die. So the first one is a maze of mud pits, and it's this giant worm with all these circular rows of teeth. Giant blind worm, as it turns out, that's trying to track her by smell. So she covers herself in mud. And since she's a hunter, like this, if she can like kill this worm, she'll be all right. So she makes this trap out of broken bones in the worm's pit to like spear it, and jumps over the pit. The worm jumps in after her. She does end up like breaking her arm really bad, but the worm gets speared.
So Feyre tricks the worm and gets it impaled, and her arm gets injured, a bone shard lodged inside. But okay, so she busts it, and she like in like a rage, like also throws something in Amarantha, but that's neither here nor there. And you find out that a bunch of people bet, like all the Fae watching basically bet on whether or not she'd live or not, or who would win, the worm or her. And only one person bet she would win, and it was Rhysand. Okay. But yes, then she's in her cell. Her arm's basically super infected from this bone shard. She's dying. She's basically dying. And then who would appear but Rhysand? He visits the sexy, dark, evil one. Okay. So he offers to heal her in exchange for 2 weeks per month. She must live with him in the night court. So Feyre refuses. And then he kind of inflicts some pain on her to force the bargain. So she negotiates to 1 week per month, and he agrees. Like, why? Should probably agree anyway, but whatever the terms. But so he heals her. But when he does it, this like permanent bond bargain thing tattoo like swirls on her hand with like this awkward eye in the middle of her palm that basically now her arm's healed, but now she has this like tattoo on her arm, making this bargain permanent.
Okay, so she's got her new arm tats, full sleeve, full fingers, palm, everything on the arm to remind her of the deal, even though Alice had told her, don't make any deals with any fairies ever, like, unless you're literally going to die. So that was basically like why she had to do it. So these female fae come in to bathe her. They paint her entire body, basically kind of to match her arm with basically patterns and paint all over her body and dress her in basically like a see-through thing that kind of, I wouldn't even call it a gown. Like it basically is just two pieces of fabric over her boobs that like hang down, and she has to go strut around with Rhysand. So I'm not like loving this part, but yeah, Amarantha notices the tattoo. She learns about the bargain that was made with Rhysand, who gives her a special kind of different fairy wine, and it makes her completely forget, which is basically like roofing her as far as I'm concerned, which I also don't approve of. Why I think he is a super bad character for this book anyway. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I've started the next one. And so she basically just is like vomiting the next day after like the wine starts wearing off. And every day is the same, like get drugged, wear nothing, paraded around, and then barf.
Yeah, basically there's paint on her body that he says is like, so I'll know if anyone else touches you, But I think the big thing that he did was when he first brought her down, he made a real show of like the bargain, and in Tamlin's face, like, oh, look, I've got your woman now is going to come spend, a week every month with me from now on. He's really trying to like piss off Tamlin. But yeah, he like multiple nights he takes her out and kind of parades her around. He doesn't do anything as far as she knows, like completely uncouth or roguish, but he parades her around like wearing almost nothing. So it's kind of messed. It's kind of sus. A lot of times they also call Rhysand Amarantha's whore. This is like a big thing. All the other fae keep being like, oh, Rhysand is like, just doing Amarantha's bizzing and what a whore and blah, blah, blah. So there is a fae that was caught trying to escape that Amarantha asked Rhysand to read his mind. He says, he was acting alone. And she basically said, okay, make him a vegetable with his brain, and he kills him instead. And so now you're sort of like, was he acting alone, though? Like, you kind of get a glimpse that the Summer Court High Lord was like almost relieved, or like his plan wasn't revealed or something. So Rhysand might have been doing somebody a favor.
All right, time for the second task, finally. Finally. No, it's okay. So she is lowered into a pit. Lucian is chained basically on the other side of a, like, I don't know, metal bar wall. And two, like, hot stabby chandeliers are basically going to be lowered onto them, and she has to answer a riddle that is written onto the wall, which she can't read. And there's 3 levers, and she has to pull one of the levers to stop the spike grates from crushing the 2 of them. I think she gets a couple words like 3 grasshoppers hopping, and like that's like all she can make out before this thing is like above her head, and it's like burning hot metal pokers coming down. So she's looking at 1, 2, or 3 like Roman numerals, and she's like, 1, that's not, or no, she's like 3, that's not right. 1 doesn't feel right, so it's got to be 2. Like me and Tamlin, it's 2. So she starts reaching for the 2, and her mind is saying, like, just suddenly searing with pain when she starts reaching for it. 1 next, I think, and feels the same thing, like pain. And then she reaches for the 3. There's no pain. And literally this thing is like 1 inch from her head. Of course, she's just imagining her body getting skewered. And so she pulls 3 and it stops. So we come to find out it's Rhysand is telepathically like guiding her to the correct answer. Then she's just like falling apart and he comforts her. She's going to break apart emotionally here at this point. But he tells her basically like, just look Amarantha in the eye, turn on your heel and walk away. And then you can like break down once you get into your cell and cry. So he basically guided her through how to handle it.
Yeah, so I'll skip some other stuff that's not really important. But back in her cell, you know, she's about to break down. She's just completely broken. And then she hears this moving, beautiful music that brings her to like beautiful tears and kind of like frees her a little bit mentally. She has no idea where that came from, but that happens. All right. Okay, at this last party before the third trial, she's again in that stupid dress and with the paint, and but this time Tamlin kind of breaks out of his stupor and comes to find her. They kind of like hide in this little room and start kissing and undressing. So instead of like him trying to free her or help her in any way, they're basically just trying to get it on. So Rhysand finds them, kicks him out to fix his clothes and leaves. And then just as Amarantha appears, like to open the door, she finds Rhysand like all up in Feyre's business, kissing her. Basically, I think kind of as a distraction, like, yeah, she was with me. And then Rhysand visits her in her little prison cell after that and said he needed peace from Amarantha's control. And he basically explains he's a slave to Amarantha in the bedroom. So that's why everyone's been calling him a whore. But he kind of has a plan of his own. He starts admitting that if Feyre wins and Tamlin regains power, he wanted Tamlin as pissed off as possible to just destroy Amarantha in a wrath. So that's why he's been egging poor Tamlin on so much. And that's why he's only touched Feyre on the arms and waist. He didn't want to like get Tamlin pissed at him. And he says that Amarantha targeted him because his family was responsible for killing Tamlin's family. And you know, she likes Tamlin, Amarantha likes Tamlin. So Feyre has this realization that Rhysand has been keeping her alive, and they kind of have this weird bonding moment. All right. Next trial.
All right. So third trial, you could think of it as like the best or the worst. I guess like easiest in one sense and hardest in the next. So I thought that was sort of an interesting, like, well, what are they going to do? You know, they have like a physical trial, a mental trial, and then I guess this would be like a trial of your soul almost. So Amarantha's on the throne next to Tamlin. Feyre declares her love for him again, and Amarantha brings out 3 hooded fae youth, I guess. They are definitely fae. The first one is male, the second one's female, and the third one's male. And there's ashwood daggers on a pillow, and she must stab all 3 of them and kill them to win the third trial. So it's like she's so close, like it's something she can do, but you're like, is she gonna do it? Like, who could do this? And she's told they're innocents. So these are not like, you know, prisoners or anyone that did anything bad. She just has to like cold-blooded murder 3 people or fairies to win third trial. So the first one is a male, and they take his hood off. So she has to like stare into his eyes while he's like pleading, like, please, please, no. And she picks up the dagger and she just does it. She stabs him in the heart and he dies. And you're like, wow, I can't believe she did that. And then the next one, they take the hood off and it's a female, and it's almost worse because she's like, you know, gives her a look, which is like, I understand you have to do this. And like, she just starts doing prayers to her, whatever they are praying to. But she basically like gives a nod to Feyre, like just go do it, which is crazy. That made it even harder, like way harder for Feyre to do it. But finally she does it, stabs her. And then the third one, they pull off the hood and it turns out it's Tamlin. So she looks up at the throne and realizes the figure sitting next to Amarantha was actually shifts back to being the adder. So she has to kill Tamlin, but then she can't free Tamlin if he's dead. And so her mind is just going crazy. And then all of a sudden she starts having these flashbacks to things that were said while she was at his manner of people saying he has a heart of stone. Oh, Tamlin has a heart of stone, this and that. And so she's like, maybe he like literally has a heart made out of stone. And she realized she never felt his heartbeat when they were like, you know, hugging and cuddling. So she's like, I'm just gonna call the bluff and stab him in the heart and hope that it's made of stone. And so she stabs him and he bleeds, but the tip of the blade bends because, as it turns out, there was a heart of stone.
Yeah, so that was the last part of the curse. No one could tell her about directly that he has a heart of stone. That was part of the curse. So wouldn't you know it? She does all the things she was asked to do, and Amarantha doesn't free them. I think she basically was like, well, I didn't say I'd do it instantly, whereas with the riddle, I said instantly, so I'm not going to do it now. And then everyone's like, hey, that's not fair. So Amarantha is really pissed off, and she's going to try to kill Feyre and begins to attack her. She's like kind of really like crazy angry and is like, admit it, you don't actually love Tamlin. So if you say that, I'll let you live. But she won't because, of course, typical female lead. She's like, I've got my principles. I'm rather not lie about loving him. So all of a sudden, Feyre can hear Rhysand yelling her name from the crowd. So he comes and he tries to stab Amarantha. So all of a sudden you're like, oh, snap. Like he wanted to end Amarantha too, right? But Amarantha stops him. So Amarantha starts hurting Rhys and Feyre's like, please stop. There's some sort of bond between her and Rhys, presumably from the bargain that was made and, you know, on her hand and everything. So she suddenly like feels like sees through his eyes and, you know, snaps back to her own. So she's like getting like suddenly she cares very much about all this situation. Tamlin is begging Amarantha not to kill Feyre, but then Amarantha is like, I'm going to kill you. So she starts torturing and basically killing Feyre right there. But while she's dying and she's being beaten into the ground, basically, Feyre solves the riddle. And she realizes it's love. So she answers it just as Amarantha breaks her spine and kills her. So very happy.
Yeah, so the curse basically starts like breaking apart, you know, I guess Amarantha's power, and then Tamlin is restored to his powers, and he grabs a sword and basically just drives it through Amarantha's skull, and that's the end of that. But then there's Feyre, who is, he also was he a beast and ripped out her throat at the same time? I don't know. But anyway, so she's dead, but this can't be the end of the story. So the High Lord of the Autumn Court comes up to the dead body of Feyre, opens his hand, a glittery spark falls and enters her chest. Every single High Lord comes up and does the same thing. And Rhysand does the same. He says, for what she gave, we'll bestow what our predecessors have granted to few before, and that this will make him and Tamlin even. So Tamlin is the last one. He says he loves her and places his hand over her heart. And she wakes up, her body is healed, and she is now a high fae, which means she is immortal. Because she was saying, what am I doing all this for? At best, I'll get a few decades with Tamlin. He'll live forever, and I'll just be dead in a few decades. That's kind of sad, to go through all this. And he still will, be ageless forever while she just withers and dies. So you kind of maybe saw this coming if you're smart, but now that she's a high fae, she also doesn't just have a couple decades, but she will live forever. So yeah, she is, I guess. So this is also kind of interesting to me, is that all the High Lords came together of it was so unfair what Amarantha did that we will do this magical act that is almost never, ever, ever, ever done. So even though they all feud with each other and hate each other and they're always at war and tricking each other, they did agree that this was not fair for her to just kill Feyre after her doing everything, solving the riddle, doing the 3 tasks.
Yeah, and the reason they were able to do it is because, like, even though she was, like, kind of about to be dead, her soul was, like, clinging on, and it was, like, almost connected to Rhysand, and she was seeing everything through his eyes. So they're definitely some, you know, their bond or whatever from the bargain. So after that, I don't know where exactly she is. She's still, like, in under the mountain somewhere, but she wakes up, she's the high fae, etc. She's woken up by some sort of like summoning from the bond from Rhys. So she goes outside and she talks to him, and she's like, "Hey, why'd you fight so hard to save me?" And he said he didn't want her to fight alone or die alone, which kind of calls back to how she was like so adamant that other fae didn't die alone earlier. He asked her what it feels like to be fae, and she says that while her body's fae, she still feels her heart is human. But she says she wishes it wasn't, because now she's having like all this like terrible guilt for like killing those 2 fae, even if it saved everyone else. He just says like, "Be glad of your human heart, Feyre. Pity those who don't feel anything at all." So he says goodbye to her, but just before he leaves, like she notices that he's suddenly like shocked when he looks in her face, and you don't know why, and then he disappears. Anyway, they burned Amarantha's body, but they note that Durian's eye and his finger bone, the Amarantha kept, somehow went missing. And then her and Tamlin returned to the Spring Court.
And one thing I kind of forgot to mention is that when she killed that second fae female, she just felt like her whole soul shattering, and like she just knew she would never be the same person again. Like everything she ever believed in was gone, and she was just like going to be dead within herself forever, like having done that act. And so that kind of is important as we go into the next book. Yeah, so it's sort of funny too, like when she becomes a fae, she's like tripping all over the place, and she's like so much more agile and fast, and you know, her fingers are different and her body is different, and so she's like getting used to being in a different body, which I thought was sort of funny. But yes, so her and Tamlin are back like all up in each other's stuff like 24/7, and they return back to his court. So what's going to happen next? We're going to find out. It's the longest podcast ever.
All right, but let's talk male leads. So, all right. Well, how did you feel about the 2, or I guess there was one main love interest and then potentially this other character, Rhysand. So, Holly, what's your thoughts?
Well, you know, I'm a why choose girl. I say both of them. I mean, yeah, I know you're team Rhysand, and I was like, well, he's super bad in this book, and you like won't convince me that he's not more bad than good, because he does all these bad things, like tell Amarantha that Tamlin has a love and she needs to be like destroyed, and causes all these problems, and he drugs her and like forces her to be his like escort at all the parties. But so yeah, I wasn't like keen on him. He seems really hot, like don't get me wrong, like that's a dark romance hero for sure. But I was more team Tamlin in this book. I don't know. I mean, this was your first time having a blonde male main character, but you weren't into him. So, and I've been looking at like who would be cast. They were supposed to start filming a show for Hulu, but I don't think it got very far, and it kind of like got nixed. So I don't think anyone has been cast for these roles, but there was some interesting, you know, Henry Cavill was mentioned for both Tamlin and Rhysand, because everyone in the entire world wants Henry Cavill to play every character that is male, basically, ever. So, yeah, I thought there was some other, like, interesting choices. But, yeah, I just more enjoyed, like, the fan art, because I feel like almost no one person encapsulates, like, the traits of, like, a faerie. So just seeing more AI and painting type of imagery made more sense to me.
Yeah, as you pointed out, this is like a blonde male lead, and I just don't think it's my type, first of all. But then, as you pointed out later, too, I got the total ick with the whole bowing down. Like, to me, every time Tamlin was helping her, sometimes it seemed genuine with, like, taking care of the family and sending her home and making sure she had money and stuff. But, like, I also felt like a lot of what he did was so like secretive. And I mean, I know there was a curse and all that, but like, come on, you're like trying to get her to fall in love with you. You have to lie to her, but the lies you're telling kind of self-servicing, and you're like basically setting up all this so she falls in love with you, and you're trying to tell her you don't need to visit your family, or I don't know. I just didn't like him as much. Rhysand, yes, is like terrible in a lot of ways in the book, but I also feel like a lot of it seemed weirdly justified. Like, you know, Amarantha was like ruling everybody, and he was like forced to like do her bidding, and it seemed like when he had to, he would try to do it as mercifully as possible, like with that like fairy that tried to escape, or like he clearly knew that she lied about her name. He can read minds and stuff, but he gave her the fake name and, you know, didn't reveal that wasn't her and things like that. So yeah, and I just think he's hotter in the book. Okay. How's the spice factor rating?
Spice was like negative infinity out of 5 for me.
No, this isn't a Hallmark movie. There was actual spice in the book. It just wasn't a lot.
Okay, 0.5 out of 5. I'll give it a half a star, a half a chili pepper. I was so sad because, you know, you read a romance like wanting a little bit more like, oh, like even if nothing happens, there could be more like, oh, he touched her arm and he suggestively this and that. And they like weren't even doing that. So I was just very like lacking. Hopefully these books heat up more. I told Lily I was going to throw them all into a volcano and not read them anymore. So I'm on number 2. We'll see what happens.
I think your exact wording was, if she doesn't sleep with Rhysand in the second book, I'm throwing it all into a volcano or something like that. So even though you're not Team Rhysand, maybe, you know, you're hoping there's something going on. I mean, they do have a bargain where she has to see him for like a week out of
They have a like mental pathway between their minds now. So we'll find out what that means.
Yes. So we shall see. All right. Well, this has been the longest podcast ever. Hope you're still with us. And yeah, if you haven't read it, now you don't have to, or maybe it's piqued your interest and now you're totally into romancy. So thank you for listening.
Yes, join us next time on Redheads on Romance. But yeah, like she said, you know, if you're just curious about this book like I was, I'd probably rather listen to a podcast about it than actually read it. But, you know, if you have read it, then we didn't spoil anything. And, you know, tell us what you think about it on Instagram at Redheads on Romance. See you next time.